A seal that soft watch this little girl fold. Senior Chief Derek Vance laughed. 200 Special Operations warriors laughed with him. Maya Sterling didn't laugh. She watched his fist come toward her face. She read the telegraphed weight shift, the amateur shoulder drop, the arrogance that made him slow. 2.7 seconds. Her palm strike hit his mandibular nerve with surgical precision. His eyes rolled back. 260 pounds of ego collapsed onto the platform like a slaughtered animal. The laughter died. Nobody moved. Nobody breathed. A 20-year-old woman stood over the most feared instructor in naval special warfare, and the silence that followed was deafening. If you're watching from anywhere around the world, stay locked in. This story goes places you won't expect. Hit that subscribe button now and drop a comment telling me what city you're watching from. I want to see how far this story travels. Maya Sterling felt the weight of 200 pairs of eyes pressing against her back as Senior Chief Derek Vance hit the platform. The sound his body made, that heavy, meaty thud of 260 pounds meeting wood, echoed across the training area at Naval Special Warfare Training Center in Coronado, California. Nobody moved. Nobody breathed. Maya stood over him, with her hands still raised in a defensive posture, her heart rate barely elevated above resting. She had trained for moments like this her entire adult life. What she hadn't trained for was the silence that followed. "Holy hell," someone whispered from the crowd. Vance's eyes fluttered. He wasn't unconscious. She had calibrated the strike precisely to avoid permanent damage, but his vestibular system was scrambled. He would need at least 30 seconds before he could stand without falling again. Maya stepped back from his prone form and addressed the crowd. "The mandibular angle," she said, her voice carrying clearly across the stunned operators. "Trigeminal nerve cluster. Doesn't matter how big you are. The human nervous system has the same vulnerabilities in everyone." She turned to look at Captain James Rutherford, the base commander, who stood at the edge of the training area with his arms crossed. His expression revealed nothing. "Any questions?" Maya asked the crowd. Nobody answered. Derek Vance had been running the Close Quarters Combat program at Coronado for 6 years. In that time, he had personally trained over 2,000 operators. He had received 3 Navy Achievement Medals for excellence in instruction. He had a wall full of certificates in his office and a reputation that preceded him into every room he entered. He also had a documented history of comments about female personnel that Human Resources had somehow never managed to address. When Maya's orders came through 3 days ago, assigning her as a guest instructor for the joint training exercise, Vance had called Captain Rutherford directly. "Sir, with respect, I don't understand this assignment." Rutherford's voice had been calm. "What don't you understand, Senior Chief?" "This Sterling, she's 20 years old. She's got maybe 2 years of actual service time. And NAV Spec War Command wants her teaching advanced CQC to my operators. Her certification level is 4, same as yours. Certification doesn't mean capability, sir. I've seen plenty of paper warriors who couldn't fight their way out of a wet paper bag." "Then I suppose she'll prove you right or wrong during the exercise." "Sir." "Is there something else, Senior Chief?" Vance had hesitated. What he wanted to say was that women didn't belong in combat instruction roles. What he wanted to say was that this was political correctness run amok. What he wanted to say was that putting a 130-pound female in front of Tier 1 operators would undermine everything he had built. But he knew better than to say any of that on a recorded line. "No, sir. Nothing else." "Good. I expect you to extend every professional courtesy to Instructor Sterling during her assignment." "Understood, sir." Vance had hung up the phone and stared at the wall for a long time. Then he started making plans. Maya knew Vance's type before she ever met him. She had encountered dozens of men like him throughout her career, men who saw her size, her gender, her age, and immediately dismissed her as irrelevant. What they never understood was that underestimation was a weapon she had learned to use. Her first day at Coronado, she arrived at 0500 to review the training facilities. Vance was already there, which surprised her. He stood in the center of the main platform with two other instructors, Chief Petty Officer Morrison and Senior Chief Hayes, and all three of them stopped talking when she walked in. "Instructor Sterling," Vance said, making her title sound like an insult. "You're early. I like to know my environment before I work in it." "Smart." He didn't make it sound like a compliment. "These are my senior instructors. Morrison handles hand-to-hand fundamentals. Hayes runs weapons retention, and I oversee the entire program." Maya nodded to each of them. Morrison wouldn't meet her eyes. Hayes looked at her the way someone might look at an unexpected pest. "I reviewed your service record," Vance continued. "Impressive paperwork. NCIS Close Protection Unit, some redacted assignments in Eastern Europe. Level 4 certification from Quantico." "That's correct. What the paperwork doesn't tell me is whether you can actually perform under pressure. These aren't administrative personnel you'll be teaching. These are the most elite warriors in the United States military." "I'm aware of who they are." Vance smiled. It didn't reach his eyes. "Good. Then you understand that they won't respect you just because you have a certification. They'll respect you when you prove you deserve it." Maya held his gaze. "I'm not here to earn their respect. I'm here to teach them skills that might save their lives. Whether they respect me is their business." Something flickered in Vance's expression, surprise maybe, or the first hint that she wasn't the pushover he had expected. "We'll see," he said. "First joint session is at 0900 tomorrow. 200 operators from 4 different units. I'll be running the primary demonstration. You'll be observing. My orders assign me as a co-instructor for the entire exercise. And I'm the senior instructor, which means I decide how we structure the sessions. You can observe tomorrow. If I think you're ready, maybe you'll demonstrate something on day 2. Maya could have argued. She could have cited her orders demanded equal standing escalated to Captain Rutherford. But she had learned long ago that some battles were better won through demonstration than confrontation. "Fine," she said. "I'll observe." Vance's smile widened. He thought he had established dominance. He had no idea what was coming. That night, Maya sat in her temporary quarters and pulled out the silver dog tag she wore beneath her shirt. The metal was warm from contact with her skin. She ran her thumb across the engraved coordinates 34.5 3 DG N 69.2075 DGs E Kabul. The rooftop, where her twin brother Lucas had taken his last breath. She closed her eyes and let the memory wash over her, not the sanitized version she told other people, but the real one. The one that woke her up at 0300, sometimes gasping for air, reaching for a phone that would never ring again. February 14th, 2023. Valentine's Day. She had been in a secure communications facility in Germany coordinating intelligence support for a DevGru operation in Afghanistan. Standard procedure. She fed them information, they executed the mission, everyone came home. Except that night, nothing went according to plan. The extraction helicopter took an RPG hit at 2,000 feet. Maya was on the satellite phone with the team leader when it happened. She heard the explosion. She heard the screaming. She heard her brother's voice cutting through the chaos. Maya, can you hear me? Lucas, what's happening? What's your status? We're hit. We're going down. Listen to me. Lucas, emergency extraction is... Listen to me." His voice cracked. He was scared. Her brother, who had never been scared of anything in his life, was scared. "Tell Dad I'm sorry I couldn't be there for his retirement ceremony. Tell him I was proud to serve under his command." And Maya, the line filled with static. "Lucas, proud of you, always. You're going to do amazing things. Don't let anyone tell you." The connection died. Maya sat in that communications facility for 6 hours, waiting for confirmation she already knew was coming. When the official notification arrived, 6 KIA no survivors. She walked outside, found a concrete wall behind the building, and punched it until her knuckles bled. Then she cleaned up, returned to duty, and didn't cry until she got back to her quarters. 3 days later. The funeral at Arlington National Cemetery was the last time Maya spoke to her father. Vice Admiral Thomas Sterling stood at the graveside in his dress whites, his face carved from granite. He had commanded DevGru for 8 years. He had sent thousands of men into combat. He had written hundreds of letters to families of the fallen. Now he was receiving one of those letters himself. After the ceremony, after the rifle salute, and the folded flag, and the procession of mourners, Maya found him standing alone near the parking lot. She had planned to offer comfort, to share grief, to bridge the distance that had always existed between them. What she got, instead, was the worst conversation of her life. "You need to transfer out of operational roles," her father said without preamble. "What? Request a desk assignment. Intelligence analysis, administrative support, something without combat risk." Maya stared at him. "Dad, I just watched them put my brother in the ground. This is what you want to talk about." "I'm trying to prevent myself from standing here again in a year." His voice was flat, controlled, the command voice he used in briefings. Lucas was built for this life. He had the instincts, the mindset, the physical capability. You're forcing yourself into a world you don't belong in. "I don't belong, Dad. I'm a Level 4 CQC instructor. I've conducted operations in denied areas across 3 continents. My service record..." "Your service record is a testament to your stubbornness, not your suitability." He finally looked at her, and what she saw in his eyes wasn't grief. It was fear wrapped in disappointment. "You're not Lucas. You'll never be Lucas. And if you keep pretending you can do what he did, you're going to end up in a box just like him." Maya felt something break inside her chest. Not her heart she had braced herself against that years ago. Something deeper. The last thread of hope that her father might one day see her as something other than a pale imitation of the child he actually valued. "You don't know the first thing about who I am," she said quietly. "I know you're my daughter. I know I've already lost one child to this war. I won't lose another." "Then you should have thought about that before you spent 20 years teaching Lucas that military service was the only thing that mattered." Her voice hardened. "You built him for this. You aimed him at it like a weapon. And now you want to blame me for following the same path you set. That's not... I'm done." Maya stepped back. "I'm done trying to earn your approval. I'm done waiting for you to notice that I'm just as capable as Lucas ever was. And I'm done pretending that your opinion matters to me." She turned and walked away. Her father called after her once, just her name, Maya, but she didn't stop. She blocked his number that night. She hadn't spoken to him since. Chapter 2. The morning of the joint training session, Maya arrived at the platform area at 0830. The sun was already brutal. August in Coronado meant temperatures that tested even the most conditioned operators. 200 personnel were assembled in formation SEALs from Teams 3, 5, and 7. Force Recon Marines from 1st and 2nd Battalion. MARSOC operators from the Raiders, a handful of Delta Selects observing from the back. The collective testosterone in the area was suffocating. Vance stood on the central platform with his senior instructors flanking him. He was in peak form chest, out-voice booming every inch the dominant alpha male he had spent his entire career cultivating. "Welcome to Joint CQC Training Exercise Bravo," he announced. "Over the next 2 weeks, you will learn techniques that could save your life when your primary weapons fail. You will be pushed to your limits. You will discover weaknesses you didn't know you had. And you will either improve or you will be found wanting." He paused for effect. "I am Senior Chief Derek Vance. I have trained more Tier 1 operators than anyone currently serving in naval special warfare. When I tell you something works, it works. When I tell you something will get you killed, it will get you killed. Are we clear?" "Clear, Senior Chief." Maya stood at the back of the formation watching. She noticed how Vance positioned himself on the platform, always facing the sun, so the operators had to squint to look at him. A dominance move, probably unconscious. She noticed how his 2 senior instructors deferred to him with their body language slightly hunched shoulders, eyes that never quite met his directly. Subordination ingrained through years of Vance making clear who was in charge. She noticed how the operators in the front rows were all male, all large, all projecting the same aggressive energy that Vance radiated, and she noticed how none of them had even glanced in her direction. Perfect. Vance ran through his demonstration for 45 minutes. Joint locks, pressure points, defensive responses to common attacks. His technique was solid. Maya had to give him that. He knew his material, and he presented it with the confidence of someone who had executed these moves thousands of times. But she also noticed his weaknesses. He telegraphed his strikes. His weight transfers were predictable. And he had a tendency to overcommit to power moves, leaving himself vulnerable to counters. Classic big man fighting syndrome. He had spent so long relying on size and strength that he had never developed the precision required to fight someone who couldn't be overpowered. At the end of his demonstration, Vance scanned the crowd. His eyes found Maya, and something ugly flickered across his face. "Before we break into practical exercises," he said, "I want to address something. Some of you may have noticed we have a guest instructor joining us for this rotation." He pointed directly at Maya. "Staff Sergeant Sterling, come up to the platform." Maya felt the shift in the crowd's attention. 200 pairs of eyes suddenly focusing on her. She walked through the formation without hurrying, climbed the 3 steps to the platform, and took her position beside Vance. Up close, the size difference was stark. He towered over her by nearly a foot. His arms were thicker than her legs. "Instructor Sterling has been assigned to co-teach this rotation," Vance announced. "She holds a Level 4 certification in close quarters combat." He paused, letting the crowd absorb her appearance. "I thought it might be instructive to demonstrate how theoretical knowledge translates to practical application." Maya kept her expression neutral, but internally she was already calculating. She knew what was coming. She had known since the moment he pointed at her. "Instructor Sterling, would you be willing to demonstrate a defensive technique against a larger opponent?" "Of course, Senior Chief." Vance smiled. "Excellent. Let's keep it simple. I'll throw a basic haymaker and you show these operators how to defend against it." The crowd shifted. Maya caught whispered comments from the front rows. "This should be good." $10 says she taps out. "What is she, like a $130 soaking wet?" Vance set his stance. His feet were too wide, his weight too far forward. He was so confident in his size advantage that he wasn't even bothering with proper form. "Ready?" he asked. "Whenever you are." He threw the punch. And Maya made a choice. She could have demonstrated a simple defensive technique exactly as he had requested. Block, redirect, create distance. Textbook stuff that would have satisfied the exercise without challenging Vance's authority. But she hadn't come to Coronado to satisfy Derek Vance. She hadn't come here to play nice with men who dismissed her before she opened her mouth. She had come here to prove something. To the operators watching. To the Navy. To her father, even though he wasn't there. Most of all to herself. So instead of defending, she attacked. She read his telegraphed weight shift, the slight drop of his shoulder, the tension in his forearm, and slipped inside his guard before the punch reached full extension. Her movement was precise, economical, the product of thousands of hours of training in environments far more dangerous than this platform. Her palm strike hit the mandibular angle at exactly the correct angle. Not hard enough to cause permanent damage, just hard enough to scramble his vestibular system and demonstrate conclusively that size meant nothing when facing superior technique. Vance's eyes rolled back. 260 pounds of senior chief hit the platform like a puppet with cut strings, and the training area went absolutely silent. Chatrotuan. Captain James Rutherford watched the entire exchange from his position near the base headquarters building 50 meters away. He had suspected something like this might happen. Vance's reputation for hostility toward female personnel was well documented, even if the formal complaints had never quite reached actionable thresholds. When Maya's assignment crossed his desk 3 weeks ago, Rutherford had made some calls. Not to her father, he had served with Vice Admiral Sterling and knew better than to invoke that relationship without permission, but to people who had actually worked with Maya Sterling. The reports were unanimous. Exceptional close-quarters capability. Calm under pressure. Highly intelligent, tactically sound, and professional to a fault. Also stubborn as hell and unwilling to tolerate disrespect from anyone regardless of rank. "She'll either revolutionize your program or burn it to the ground," one former commanding officer had told him. Probably both. Watching Vance crumple to the platform, Rutherford allowed himself a small smile. He pulled out his phone and sent a text to his aide. "Clear my schedule for this afternoon. I have a feeling there's going to be paperwork." On the platform, Maya stood over Vance's prone form and addressed the silent crowd. "The mandibular angle," she said. "Trigeminal nerve cluster. Proper targeting negates size advantages. That's not theory. That's anatomy." Vance groaned. He was starting to recover, his hands pressing against the platform as he tried to push himself up. Maya stepped back to give him space. She could have pressed the advantage a follow-up strike, a joint lock, a dozen other techniques that would have demonstrated complete dominance. But that wasn't the point. The point was made the moment he hit the ground. Vance struggled to his feet. His face was flushed, his eyes unfocused. When he finally managed to stand, he had to grab Chief Morrison's shoulder to keep from falling. What the hell was that?" His voice was slurred, confused. "A teaching moment, Senior Chief." The crowd had begun to murmur. Maya caught fragments of conversation. "Did you see how fast she moved? She barely touched him." "That was surgical." Vance's confusion was hardening into rage. Maya watched the transition happen in real time, the embarrassment transforming into fury, the fury being tamped down by the knowledge that 200 people were watching, and any retaliation would destroy what remained of his authority. "This," he had to stop and breathe. "This exercise is suspended for the day. Dismissed." The formation broke apart slowly, operators dispersing in small groups while casting glances back at the platform. Maya didn't move. She stood in her original position, hands clasped behind her back, waiting. Vance stared at her with undisguised hatred. "You think that was clever?" His voice was low, meant only for her ears. I think it was instructive. You just made an enemy little girl. I've been running this program for 6 years. I have relationships throughout the entire special operations community. One word from me and your career is finished. Maya met his eyes. Senior Chief, I've operated in denied territories where discovery meant death. I've conducted missions in environments where no one knew my name or my face. I've survived things you can't imagine. She leaned slightly closer. You don't scare me, and you don't have the power to end anything of mine. She walked off the platform, leaving him standing there. Behind her, she heard him say something to Chief Morrison, probably instructions to document the incident, build a case against her. She didn't care. The first battle was won. The war was just beginning. That evening, Maya returned to her quarters and found a note slipped under her door. 1900 Building 47, Room 203. Come alone. R. She recognized the building number. Base Commander's office. At 1855, she knocked on Captain Rutherford's door. His aide directed her inside, then closed the door behind her, leaving them alone. Rutherford was behind his desk, reviewing something on his computer. He didn't look up when she entered. Instructor Sterling, sit. She sat. He finished whatever he was reading, then turned to face her. His expression was unreadable. Do you know how many formal complaints Senior Chief Vance has filed in his career? No, sir. 37. Against subordinates, peers, and superior officers who challenged his methods or questioned his judgment. Do you know how many of those complaints resulted in disciplinary action? No, sir. 29. Rutherford leaned back in his chair. He's very good at building cases. Very good at finding regulation violations, documenting incidents, creating paper trails that make his targets look incompetent or insubordinate. Maya said nothing. He's already started a file on you. I saw the preliminary documentation on my way back from the training area. Assault on a senior instructor, disruption of official training exercise, conduct unbecoming. Sir, I was demonstrating defensive technique as requested. Rutherford held up a hand. I know what you were doing. I watched the entire exchange, and I know what Vance was doing too. He paused. What I'm telling you is that he's going to make the next 2 weeks very difficult for you. He knows this program. He knows the regulations. And he's extremely motivated to see you fail. Understood, sir. Do you understand, though? Rutherford leaned forward. I approved your assignment because your service record suggested you could handle this environment. But what happened today wasn't just a demonstration of technique. It was a declaration of war. And Vance is the kind of man who fights wars to the death. Maya felt the silver dog tag warm against her chest. Sir, permission to speak freely. Granted. My brother was killed 18 months ago during a DevGru operation in Kabul. He was the best operator I've ever known, natural talent. Perfect instincts, the kind of warrior they make movies about. And he's dead. Rutherford's expression softened slightly. After his funeral, my father told me I should transfer out of operational roles. He said I was forcing myself into a world I didn't belong in. He said I would get myself killed trying to be something I wasn't. She held Rutherford's gaze. I'm not here to prove my father wrong. I'm not here to avenge my brother or live up to his memory. I'm here because I'm good at this work, and the operators in that crowd today deserve training from the best instructors available, regardless of what those instructors look like or how much they weigh. She paused. Vance can file all the complaints he wants. He can make these 2 weeks as difficult as he's capable of making them. But I'm not going to run, and I'm not going to fail. And when this rotation is over, the operators who trained with me will be better at close quarters combat than they were before. That's all that matters. Rutherford studied her for a long moment. Then he nodded slowly. "Your father was wrong about you," he said. Maya blinked. "Sir, Thomas and I served together in the early 2000s. Good officer, brilliant tactician. But he always had a blind spot when it came to capability that didn't match his preconceptions." Rutherford stood and walked to his window. "What he said to you at your brother's funeral, I heard about it through mutual friends. I thought it was the worst thing he could have said to a grieving sibling. It wasn't his finest moment. No. But I suspect it wasn't entirely about you either. I think he was terrified of losing another child, and fear makes people say terrible things." Maya didn't respond. She had considered that possibility herself, in the quiet moments when she wasn't actively hating him. Rutherford turned back to face her. "I'm going to approve Vance's complaint." Maya's stomach dropped. "Sir, I'm going to approve it," he continued, "and then I'm going to assign you to a field evaluation that will either prove his concerns valid or demonstrate conclusively that you belong here. A 72-hour SEER exercise with a mixed team. You'll be team leader. The results will be documented by independent evaluators, and they will form the basis for either your continued assignment or your removal from the program." He walked back to his desk and picked up a folder. "This is the exercise brief. You have 7 days to prepare. Your team will include 3 operators who have been specifically selected to challenge your leadership. Vance helped choose them." Maya took the folder. Her hands were steady. "Understand what I'm offering you," Rutherford said. "This is a chance to prove yourself under conditions no one can dispute. If you succeed, Vance's complaints become irrelevant. If you fail, you'll be reassigned and his position will be vindicated. And if I refuse, then Vance's complaint moves forward through normal channels, and you'll spend the next several months fighting bureaucratic battles instead of teaching operators. Your choice." Maya looked at the folder in her hands. 72 hours in the field, with a hostile team being evaluated on leadership under stress, with her entire career hanging in the balance. She had faced worse odds in Eastern Europe. "I accept," she said. Rutherford nodded. "I thought you might." He extended his hand, and she shook it. "One more thing," he said as she turned to leave. "I made a call to your father after reviewing your assignment. I thought he should know what you were doing." Maya froze. "He didn't ask me to intervene. He didn't ask me to protect you or give you special treatment. He asked me one question: is she as good as her record suggests?" Rutherford paused. "I told him I'd find out." Maya stood in the doorway processing this information. Her father knew she was here. He had asked about her capability. He hadn't tried to interfere. She didn't know what to do with that. "Good evening, Instructor Sterling," Rutherford said. "Good evening, sir." She walked out into the California night, the folder clutched against her chest, the dog tag warm beneath her shirt. 7 days, 72 hours in the field, and everything she had worked for hanging by a thread. Maya spent the next 6 days preparing for the field exercise, while Vance systematically dismantled every aspect of her assignment. It started small. Her scheduled training sessions were moved to the worst hours, 1300 to 1500, when the Coronado heat turned the platform into a griddle. Her equipment requests disappeared into administrative limbo. The operators assigned to her instruction groups were consistently the most problematic trainees, the ones other instructors had flagged for attitude issues or performance deficiencies. She adapted. She arrived at 0500 every morning to prepare her training space before the heat became unbearable. She sourced her own equipment through contacts at other bases. And she turned the problematic trainees into a challenge, pushing them harder than any other instructor until they either improved or requested transfer. On the 3rd day, Petty Officer 2nd Class Jordan Blake approached her after a session. "Instructor Sterling, Got a minute?" Maya wiped sweat from her forehead with a towel. Blake was a SEAL Team 5 operator, 24 years old, compact and quiet, with the watchful eyes of someone who missed nothing. "What do you need, Petty Officer?" "I heard you're leading a team for the Siri exercise next week." "That's correct." Blake glanced around to ensure no one was listening. "I also heard Vance handpicked your team members, specifically chose people who would give you problems." Maya said nothing. "I'm one of them," Blake continued. "He asked me personally if I wanted to be on your team. Said it would be an opportunity to see firsthand why women don't belong in combat instruction." "And you accepted?" "I accepted because I wanted to see for myself, not because of what Vance thinks." Blake met her eyes directly. "What you did on that platform was the cleanest technique I've ever seen. I've been training CQC for 6 years, and I've never seen anyone move that fast." Maya studied him. "What are you telling me, Petty Officer? I'm telling you I don't have a problem with you. But the other two on your team, Corporal Webb and Lance Corporal Reyes, they're different situations. Webb is Vance's protege. He'll do everything he can to make you fail. And Reyes..." Blake hesitated. "Reyes has a knee injury she's been hiding. Medical doesn't know about it. If it gives out during the exercise, you'll be carrying dead weight." "Why are you telling me this?" "Because I believe in fair fights, and what Vance is doing isn't fair." Blake stepped back. "I'll follow your orders during the exercise. I can't promise I'll agree with all your decisions, but I'll follow them. That's more than you'll get from Webb." He walked away before Maya could respond. She watched him go, processing the information. A hidden injury, a hostile team member, and 72 hours in the field with her career on the line. Vance had stacked the deck, but Maya had played worse hands before. The night navigation exercise came on day 4. Vance announced it during morning formation as a surprise evaluation for all instructors. 12 miles through the mountains of Camp Pendleton in complete darkness, minimal equipment, individual completion times recorded and ranked. This will assess whether our instructors possess the field capabilities necessary to train special operations personnel. Vance said, his eyes finding Maya in the formation. Anyone who fails to complete the course in under 4 hours will be placed on remedial training status. 4 hours for 12 miles through mountain terrain at night. It was aggressive, but achievable for experienced operators. What Vance didn't mention was that he had personally scouted the route and knew every shortcut, every obstacle, every terrain feature that could slow someone down. Maya caught the looks from other instructors. Chief Morrison wouldn't meet her eyes. Senior Chief Hayes actually smirked. They all expected her to fail. She reported to the start point at 2100 hours with 3 other instructors, Gunnery Sergeant Tyler Ross from Force Recon Chief, Petty Officer David Chen from SEAL Team 3, and Staff Sergeant Elena Vasquez from MARSOC. Ross was 32, heavily muscled, with the confident bearing of someone who had spent 14 years in reconnaissance units. Chen was 29, lean and quiet, his expression revealing nothing. Vasquez was 27, the only other woman, and she positioned herself near Maya without speaking. The evaluator, a lieutenant commander from the training command, briefed them on the route. 12 miles to the finish point. You have maps and compasses only. No GPS, no night vision, no communication devices. You start at 2-minute intervals. Instructor Sterling, you're first. Maya felt the weight of that decision. First meant no one to follow. First meant navigating blind while the others could track her mistakes. Vance had arranged this too. "Questions?" the lieutenant commander asked. Maya had none. She had memorized the topographic features of the entire Camp Pendleton range during her first week at Coronado. Whatever route they had planned, she would find a better one. "Begin on my mark," 3, 2, 1, mark. Maya moved into the darkness. The first 3 miles were straightforward a ridgeline that offered solid footing and clear navigation points. Maya maintained a steady pace, conserving energy while making good time. At mile 4, she hit the first decision point. The marked route descended into a valley, then climbed a steep escarpment on the far side. It was the obvious path, which meant it was probably the wrong one. Maya studied the terrain in the dim moonlight. There was another option, a traverse along the contour line that would add distance but avoid the energy-draining climb. The math worked out to roughly the same time, but with significantly less physical cost. She chose the traverse. At mile 7, she heard movement behind her. Someone was catching up, moving fast through the valley route she had avoided. Ross. It had to be Ross. He had started 2 minutes after her and was clearly pushing hard. Maya increased her pace slightly. Not racing was stupid in night navigation, but moving with more urgency. The sound behind her faded. Whoever it was had hit the escarpment and slowed down. At mile 9, Maya made her second unconventional choice. The marked route followed a dry creek bed that would be easy to navigate, but exposed to observation. Instead, she cut through a dense stand of brush that added difficulty, but shaved nearly half a mile off the distance. Her uniform was torn by thorns. Her hands were scratched and bleeding. But when she emerged on the other side, she could see the finish point in the distance. She crossed the line at 13 hours. 2 hours and 13 minutes. The lieutenant commander checked his stopwatch twice. That's a course record, he said. Maya nodded and stepped aside to wait for the others. Ross finished 47 minutes later, his face drenched in sweat. He saw Maya already there and stopped dead. How the hell did you beat me by 47 minutes? Different route. There's only one route. I've run this course 6 times. There's always more than one route. You just have to be willing to look for it. Ross stared at her for a long moment. Then something shifted in his expression, the skepticism giving way to something that looked almost like respect. Where did you learn to navigate like that? Eastern Europe. Denied territories where Jeep was jammed and satellite phones got you killed. Denied territories. Ross processed this. What were you doing in denied territories? Things that aren't in my official record. Chen finished next 18 minutes after Ross. Vasquez came in last 32 minutes behind Chen, limping slightly from a twisted ankle she had picked up somewhere on the escarpment. The lieutenant commander recorded all times and departed to file his report. In the darkness, Ross approached Maya again. Vance is trying to get you removed from the program, he said quietly. He's building a case that you're a liability. He's got Morrison and Hayes documenting every possible violation, every moment that could be interpreted as misconduct. I know. You need allies, people who can testify that you're competent, that you belong here. I don't need allies. I need witnesses. Ross shook his head. You're wrong about that. In this community, reputation is everything. If Vance poisons your reputation before you can establish yourself, it won't matter how many course records you set. Maya considered this. What are you suggesting? I'm suggesting that there are people in this program who don't share Vance's opinions about women in combat roles. People who judge competence by performance, not by gender. Ross paused. I'm one of them. Chen is another. Vasquez, obviously. Even Blake, who I hear, is on your SEER team. And you're offering what exactly? To tell the truth when people ask, to document what I've seen with my own eyes, to be a witness since that's what you say you need. Ross extended his hand. Whatever happens in that field exercise, you've already proven something to me tonight. I'd rather have you watching my back than half the guys I've served with. Maya looked at his hand. In her experience, trust was earned through action, not words. But Ross had no reason to offer this, if he didn't mean it. She shook his hand. "Thank you, Gunnery Sergeant. Tyler, if we're going to be allies, you might as well use my first name." "Maya." He nodded once and walked toward his vehicle. Maya stood alone in the darkness, feeling something she hadn't expected, the first fragile threads of connection in a place she had expected to face completely alone. The next morning, Vance called her to his office. She stood at attention while he sat behind his desk, a folder open in front of him. "You completed the night navigation course in 2 hours and 13 minutes, he said flatly. "That's correct, Senior Chief. That's 47 minutes faster than Gunnery Sergeant Ross, who has 14 years of reconnaissance experience." Maya said nothing. "I find that time suspicious." Vance closed the folder. The course was designed to test specific skills along a specific route. Your time suggests you either found unauthorized shortcuts or received assistance from someone familiar with the terrain. I navigated using map and compass as instructed. I chose routes based on terrain analysis and energy conservation. I received no assistance. That's your claim? That's the truth. Vance leaned forward. Let me be direct with you, Instructor Sterling. I don't know who pulled strings to get you assigned to this program. I don't know what political considerations are protecting you from the consequences you deserve, but I know what I saw on that platform, and I know what I'm seeing now. What are you seeing, Senior Chief? Someone who doesn't belong here. Someone who got lucky once and thinks that makes her special. Someone who's going to fail spectacularly during the field exercise and prove that everything I've been saying about women in combat instruction is correct. Maya held his gaze. Is that everything, Senior Chief? No, one more thing. Vance stood and walked around his desk until he was standing directly in front of her, using his height to intimidate. I've trained warriors for 18 years. I've seen hundreds of people come through this program thinking they were exceptional. Most of them learned humility. The ones who didn't, he smiled coldly. They learned it eventually, usually the hard way. Maya didn't step back. Senior Chief, I've been underestimated by better men than you. I've been threatened by people who actually had the power to end my career. I've operated in environments where failure meant death, not reassignment. She met his eyes without flinching. You don't scare me. And your opinion of what I can or can't do is irrelevant. Something flickered in Vance's expression. Surprise, maybe, or the first hint of recognition that she wasn't going to break the way he expected. We'll see, he said. Dismissed. Maya turned and walked out. Behind her, she heard him pick up his phone and begin dialing. Whatever he was planning, it wasn't over. On the 6th day, Maya received her final team roster and exercise brief. Team composition, team leader, Maya Sterling, NCIS, close protection, petty officer, 2nd class, Jordan Blake. SEAL, Team 5, Corporal Marcus Webb, Force Recon, Lance, Corporal Sophia Reyes, MARISOC, exercise parameters, 72-hour CRE simulation, downed pilot scenario in hostile territory, 4 teams of 4 operators inserted at different points in Angeles National Forest. Objective reach extraction point 45 miles away while evading aggressor force of 30 instructors. Teams graded on navigation accuracy, evasion success, survival skills, team cohesion, and leadership under stress. Maya studied the roster. Blake had already indicated he would follow orders. Reyes was an unknown with a hidden injury. Webb was Vance's man, which meant he would actively undermine her at every opportunity. This wasn't a team. It was a minefield. She found Webb that afternoon running combat drills on a practice field. He was 22, heavily muscled, with the aggressive bearing of someone who had never been told no in his life. "Corporal Webb, a word." Webb finished his drill before acknowledging her. The disrespect was deliberate and obvious. "Instructor Sterling." He made her title sound like a joke. "What do you need?" "I need to discuss team protocols for the CR exercise." "Don't really see what there is to discuss. You give orders, I decide whether they're worth following." "That's not how chain of command works." Webb smiled. "In a real unit, sure. But this is an exercise, and you're a guest instructor who got lucky once on a training platform." He stepped closer, using his size the same way Vance did. "Senior Chief told me about you. Said you're a political appointment, someone's attempt to prove a point about diversity. Said you've never seen real combat, never operated in a real team environment. Senior Chief Vance doesn't have access to my complete service record. Senior Chief Vance has trained more Tier 1 operators than anyone in naval special warfare. I think he knows what combat experience looks like." Webb shook his head. "Here's how this is going to work. During the exercise, I'll do what I think is best for the team. If that happens to align with your orders, great. If it doesn't, I'll make my own decisions." Maya studied him. He was young, arrogant, and completely convinced of his own superiority. He reminded her of 100 other operators she had encountered, men who thought physicality was the only measure of capability. "Corporal, I'm going to say this once. During that exercise, you will follow my orders, not because I outrank you, but because I'm the team leader, and that's how teams function. If you have concerns about my decisions, you can voice them through proper channels. But if you actively undermine my leadership, I will document it, and your career will suffer the consequences." Webb laughed. "You think I'm scared of documentation? Senior Chief has my back. Whatever happens out there, he'll make sure I come out clean. Senior Chief Vance won't be in the field with us, and the evaluators don't answer to him. The evaluators will see what he tells them to see." Maya felt a cold clarity settle over her. Webb wasn't just hostile, he was actively planning to sabotage her leadership. Vance had chosen him specifically for this purpose. "We'll see," she said, echoing Vance's words from earlier that day. "Dismissed, Corporal." Webb smirked and walked away. Maya watched him go, her mind already calculating. She couldn't change Webb's attitude before the exercise. She couldn't force him to follow orders he was determined to ignore. But she could prepare for his resistance, anticipate his challenges, and find ways to lead effectively despite his opposition. She had 48 hours to develop a strategy for commanding a team that included someone actively working against her. In Eastern Europe, she had operated in environments where trust was a luxury she couldn't afford. She had completed missions with assets who were potential double agents, contacts who might be setting traps, local partners whose loyalties were perpetually uncertain. This was similar. Different context, same fundamental challenge accomplished the objective with imperfect resources and unreliable personnel. She could do this. She had to do this. Everything she had worked for depended on the next 72 hours. The night before the exercise, Maya found Sofia Reyes alone in the equipment bay, testing her gear. Reyes was 21, compact and athletic, with the focused intensity of someone who had fought for every opportunity she had received. When Maya entered, she stiffened visibly. "Instructor Sterling, I didn't expect anyone else here this late." "Neither did I." Maya approached slowly. "Mind if I check my equipment next to you?" "It's a shared space." They worked in silence for several minutes. Maya watched Reyes from the corner of her eye, noting how she favored her left leg, how she winced slightly when she knelt down. "Your knee," Maya said quietly. Reyes froze. "I noticed it during morning PT 3 days ago, and again during the movement drills yesterday." Maya kept her voice neutral. How bad is it? Reyes didn't answer for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was barely audible. Bad enough. Twisted it during phase 1 of the selection course. Should have reported it, gotten it treated. But I knew if I did, they'd pull me from the program. And you'd rather risk permanent damage than lose your slot. I'd rather risk anything than lose this chance. Reyes finally met Maya's eyes. Do you know how many women have completed this Program 6? In the entire history of Naval Special Warfare Training Command. 6 women. Her voice hardened. I will not be pulled from this rotation because of an injury I can manage. Maya understood that determination. She had felt it herself countless times. The refusal to accept limitations, the willingness to sacrifice anything for the chance to prove herself. During the exercise, Maya said slowly, if your knee fails, it puts the entire team at risk. We'll be moving through rough terrain for 72 hours. One person down means everyone slows down or someone carries extra weight. Reyes's face fell. Are you going to report it? No. Surprise flickered across Reyes's expression. But I need to know exactly how bad it is. Can you move under load? Can you navigate rough terrain? What triggers the worst pain? I can move. It's stable when I keep it wrapped tight. The worst pain comes from lateral movement, quick direction changes, uneven surfaces. Maya nodded. Then we plan around that. I'll adjust our route to minimize lateral stress. You stay off point position. And if it gives out completely, you tell me immediately instead of trying to push through. Why would you do that for me? Because I know what it's like to be one injury report away from losing everything you've worked for. Maya finished checking her equipment and stood. And because we started as a 4-person team, we finish as a 4-person team. That's not negotiable. Reyes stared at her for a long moment. Then something shifted in her expression, the wariness giving way to something that looked almost like hope. Webb is going to try to sabotage you, she said quietly. I know. He's been talking to other people in the program, telling them you're going to fail, that Vance is going to use the exercise to prove his point about women instructors. I know that too. How can you be so calm about it? Maya thought about the question. How could she be calm? Webb was actively working against her. Vance had stacked every possible disadvantage in her favor. The evaluators might already be predisposed to interpret her actions negatively, but she had faced worse odds. She had operated in environments where a single mistake meant death. She had completed missions that no one believed were possible. This was just another mission. Harder than most, but not impossible. I'm calm because panicking doesn't help, Maya said finally. And because I've learned that the only thing I can control is my own performance. Everything else, Webb's attitude, Vance's schemes, other people's opinions, is outside my control. So I focus on what I can actually do, and I do it as well as I possibly can. Reyes considered this. I'll follow your orders, she said. Whatever happens out there, you can count on me. Thank you, Lance Corporal. Sophia, if we're going to survive 72 hours together, you might as well use my first name. Maya allowed herself a small smile. Sophia, get some sleep. Tomorrow is going to be long. She walked out of the equipment bay, leaving Reyes to finish her preparations. 2 allies now, Blake and Reyes. One hostile element in Webb. Not ideal odds, but not impossible either. Maya returned to her quarters and pulled out the silver dog tag. She held it in her palm, feeling the familiar weight of the metal, the engraved coordinates pressing against her skin. Kabul. The rooftop. Her brother's last words. You're going to do amazing things. Don't let anyone tell you. The connection had died before he finished the sentence. Maya had spent 18 months wondering what he was going to say. Don't let anyone tell you that you can't. Don't let anyone tell you that you don't belong. Don't let anyone tell you that you're not enough. All of those, none of those. It didn't matter anymore. What mattered was that Lucas had believed in her. Even at the end, even in those final, terrifying moments, he had believed she was capable of amazing things. She couldn't let him be wrong. Maya closed her hand around the dog tag, closed her eyes, and let herself rest. Tomorrow, the real test began. The helicopter dropped them at 0347 hours, 4 figures disappearing into the darkness of Angeles National Forest, with nothing but their training and 72 hours of hostile territory ahead. Maya hit the ground first, immediately scanning for threats, while Blake, Reyes, and Webb landed behind her. The rotor wash faded as the helicopter banked away, and then there was only silence. "Rally point 50 meters north," Maya said quietly. "Move." They moved. Blake took the rear without being asked, covering their 6. As they pushed through dense undergrowth toward a small clearing Maya had identified on her map during pre-mission planning. Webb was already lagging, making no effort to maintain proper spacing. At the rally point, Maya gathered them close. "All right, we're 45 miles from extraction with 30 aggressors hunting us. The other 3 teams inserted at different points, which means the aggressors will be spread thin, trying to cover all approaches." She pulled out her map and compass. "Our route avoids the obvious paths. We move at night rest during the day when aerial observation is most effective." "That's backwards," Webb said immediately. "Standard doctrine says move during daylight when you can see obstacles and threats. Standard doctrine assumes you have numerical advantage or air support. We have neither." Maya kept her voice level. "The aggressors know the terrain better than we do. Our only advantage is unpredictability. If we do what they expect, we lose. If we stumble around in the dark, we lose faster." Blake stepped in. "She beat Gunnery Sergeant Ross by 47 minutes on a night navigation course. I think she knows what she's doing." Webb turned to Blake with barely concealed anger. "Nobody asked you, petty officer." "Nobody needs to ask me. I'm stating facts." The tension crackled between them. Maya let it hang for exactly 2 seconds, long enough to establish that she wasn't afraid of conflict, short enough to prevent escalation. "We're wasting time. Webb, you have concerns, note them. But we move on my route until my route proves wrong. Clear." Webb's jaw tightened. "Clear. Sophia, how's your leg?" Reyes looked startled that Maya had asked in front of the others. "It's fine." "Blake, you're on point for the first rotation. I'll navigate. Webb, you've got rear security. Sophia, stay in the middle where the terrain is most forgiving. We move in 5. They moved. The first 6 hours were brutal. Maya had chosen a route that followed ridgelines and avoided valleys harder climbing, but impossible for vehicles and difficult for foot patrols to cover effectively. By dawn, they had covered 8 miles and found a concealed position in a rocky outcropping that provided cover from aerial observation. 4 hours rest, Maya said. 2 on watch, 2 sleeping. Webb and Blake first watch. Sophia and I will relieve you at 1000. "Why do you get to sleep first?" Webb demanded. "Because I'm the navigator, and if I'm exhausted when we move tonight, I'll make mistakes that get us all captured." Maya didn't wait for his response. "Wake me if anything moves within 200 meters. She found a flat spot between 2 boulders and closed her eyes. Sleep came instantly, a skill she had developed during operations in Eastern Europe, where rest was grabbed in fragments between moments of extreme danger. She dreamed of Kabul, the rooftop, Lucas's voice cutting through static. "Maya, Maya, can you hear me? I can hear you, Lucas. I'm proud of you, always. You're going to do amazing things. Lucas, don't let anyone tell you. She woke to Blake's hand on her shoulder. 1,000 hours, your watch. Maya blinked away the dream and sat up. Her body ached from the hard ground, but her mind was clear. Anything quiet. Too quiet, maybe. I expected at least one aggressor patrol by now. They're probably concentrated on the valley routes. Most teams will take the path of least resistance. Blake nodded slowly. That's what I figured. He hesitated. Webb's been talking to himself for the last hour, complaining about your leadership, your decisions, your right to be here. Is he planning something? Hard to say. He's angry, but I don't think he's stupid enough to do anything that would get him eliminated. Keep watching him. If he makes a move to compromise our position, I need to know immediately. Blake moved to wake Reyes, while Maya took up a position with clear sight lines to the north and east. The forest was still the kind of stillness that could mean safety or could mean something waiting to happen. She pulled out her compass and checked their bearing. 37 miles to extraction. 60 hours remaining. They could do this. They had to do this. The second night, everything went wrong. They were 12 miles from their first position when Sophia's knee gave out completely. One moment she was moving steadily through the darkness. The next she was on the ground, her face contorted in silent agony. Maya was at her side instantly. What happened? I don't know. It just collapsed. Sophia's voice was tight with pain, and something worse, shame. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Don't apologize. Can you put weight on it? Sophia tried to stand. Her leg buckled immediately, and she would have fallen if Maya hadn't caught her. No, I can't. Webb materialized from the darkness, his expression ugly with vindication. Perfect. This is exactly what I said would happen. She's dead weight now. We need to cache her and move as a 3-person team. We're not leaving her. Then we're all getting captured. Simple math, instructor. 4 people moving slow means everyone fails. 3 people moving fast means 3 people succeed. Blake moved to Sophia's other side. What's the play, Maya? Maya's mind raced through options. They were 33 miles from extraction, with a team member who couldn't walk. Standard protocol said Webb was right. Cache the injured member with minimal supplies, complete the mission, recover them during extraction. But Maya had never been good at standard protocol. We redistribute her load. I'll take her rifle and pack. Blake, you take her ammunition and water. Webb, you take her rations and emergency kit. That's insane. We'll be carrying an extra 40 pounds each. 30 pounds each distributed across 3 people. It's manageable. And Sophia. You planning to carry her too? Maya looked at Sophia, who was fighting back tears of frustration and humiliation. Sophia, I need you to be honest with me. If we splint that knee and wrap it tight, can you move at reduced speed? I'm not asking for normal pace. I'm asking for 30%. Sophia wiped her eyes. I don't know. Think. You know your body. 30% pace, frequent breaks, no lateral movement. Can you do it? Sophia closed her eyes. When she opened them, there was steel there. Yes, I can do it. Then that's what we're doing. Maya turned to Webb. Your objection is noted. Help me build a splint. That was not a request, Corporal. Something in Maya's voice made Webb hesitate. He looked at Blake, who was already gathering materials for a splint, then at Sophia, who was watching Maya with something like wonder. This is a mistake, he said, but he knelt down and started helping. They fashioned a splint from branches and paracord, wrapping Sophia's knee tight enough to provide stability without cutting off circulation. It took 20 minutes they couldn't afford, but when they finished, Sophia could hobble forward with support. New formation, Maya said. I'm on point. Blake, you're with Sophia, help her over rough terrain. Webb, rear security. We adjust our pace to her capability and we stop every hour for 5 minutes. This is going to add hours to our timeline. Then we walk faster during the hours we have. Move out. They moved. The next 8 hours were the hardest of Maya's life. Every step was a calculation terrain that wouldn't stress Sophia's knee roots, that avoided detection pacing, that balanced speed against endurance. She could feel Webb's resentment radiating from behind her, could sense him waiting for her to fail. But she didn't fail. At 0300, on the third day, they reached a narrow stream crossing that marked the halfway point of their journey. Maya called a halt in a dense thicket and checked her map. 22 miles remaining, 28 hours until extraction window opens. Blake looked at Sophia, who had collapsed against a tree trunk, her face pale with exhaustion and pain. Can she make it? She'll make it. Maya's voice carried absolute certainty. We started as 4. We finish as 4. Webb shook his head but said nothing. He had stopped actively arguing 3 hours ago when he realized Maya's decisions were actually working. I'm going to scout ahead, Maya said. There's a bottleneck about 2 miles forward where the terrain funnels into a narrow canyon. If the aggressors have set up an observation post anywhere, it'll be there. I'll go with you, Blake offered. Negative. Stay with Sophia and Webb. If I'm not back in 90 minutes, you take over as team leader and continue to extraction. Maya, that's an order, petty officer. Blake held her gaze for a moment, then nodded. Maya moved into the darkness alone. She found the aggressor checkpoint exactly where she expected a 2-man observation post covering the canyon entrance. They had night vision equipment and a radio, which meant they could call in reinforcements within minutes of spotting a target. The standard approach would be to detour around them, adding 4 or 5 miles to the route. With Sophia's injury, that detour might cost them the mission. Maya studied the position for 15 minutes, analyzing patterns, identifying weaknesses. The observers were good, but they were bored 3 days into the exercise, sitting in the same spot, watching for teams that might never come this way. Their attention wandered every few minutes. She made a decision that wasn't in any manual. At 0347, she emerged from cover directly in front of the observation post. Contact, one of the observers shouted, reaching for his radio. Wait. Maya raised her hands, showing she was unarmed. Before you call it in, I want to make you an offer. The observers hesitated, confused. This wasn't in their briefing. What kind of offer? I'll give you intelligence on another team's position in exchange for a 15-minute window to pass through your sector undetected. The senior observer, a chief petty officer Maya recognized from the training command, laughed. That's not how this exercise works, instructor. No. Then explain to me why you've been watching this canyon for 3 days while Team 1 walked right past your position 6 hours ago, using the Northern Ridge route. The chief's smile faded. How do you know about Team 1? Because I've been tracking all 4 teams since insertion. I know where they are, where they're going, and how they're avoiding your patrols. Maya lowered her hands slowly. Team 2 is about to walk into the ambush you set up at Checkpoint Delta. If you want to reposition and actually catch someone, I can tell you exactly where they'll be in 4 hours. The chief exchanged a look with his partner. Why would you give up another team? Because I don't care about other teams. I care about my team. And right now my team includes an injured member who can't make a 5-mile detour. Silence stretched between them. This is against the rules, the junior observer said. The rules say you're supposed to catch us. They don't say how we're supposed to evade you. Maya met the chief's eyes. 15 minutes. That's all I'm asking. The chief studied her for a long moment. Then he shook his head slowly, but not in refusal. You've got guts, instructor. I'll give you that. He checked his watch. 15 minutes, starting now. If I see any of your team members after that window closes, we call it in. Understood. Maya vanished back into the darkness. She reached her team in 11 minutes. Move, now. We have 4 minutes to clear the canyon. Nobody questioned her. They moved. 4 minutes and 30 seconds later, they emerged on the other side of the bottleneck. Behind them, Maya heard the chief's voice on the radio reporting negative contact. Webb stared at her. What the hell did you do back there? I negotiated. You negotiated with the aggressors. In denied territory operations, you use every resource available, including people who are supposed to be your enemies. Maya checked her compass. We're past the hardest section, 18 miles to extraction. Webb opened his mouth to say something else, then closed it. For the first time since the exercise began, he looked at her without contempt. The fourth day brought the unexpected. They were 7 miles from extraction when they encountered Team 2, or what was left of them. 3 operators, 1 injured, being transported by a mock-up aggressor patrol toward the detention facility for the resistance training portion of the exercise. Blake spotted them first. Contact. 4 aggressors, 3 prisoners. They're moving west toward the detention site. Maya assessed the situation quickly. This wasn't her problem. Team 2 had been captured fair and square. Standard protocol said to avoid contact and continue to extraction. But she kept thinking about what she had told the chief at the checkpoint. I don't care about other teams. That wasn't true. She cared about everyone wearing the same uniform, everyone who had volunteered for this brutal exercise, everyone who was trying to prove they belonged. We can create a diversion, she said quietly. Webb stared at her. Are you insane? That's not our mission. We're 7 miles from extraction. Sophia can barely walk, and you want to risk everything for people who already failed. They haven't failed yet. They're being transported, not processed. Blake understood immediately. If they reach the detention facility, they're officially captured. But if they escape before processing, they can still complete the exercise. Maya nodded. It's a loophole, but it's valid. This is suicide, Webb said. We'll get caught. We'll lose everything we've worked for. Sophia, who had been silent for most of the past day, spoke up. Maya didn't leave me when I couldn't walk. She redistributed my load and adjusted the pace and got me here. Her voice was stronger than it had been in hours. If there's a chance to help those people, we should take it. Webb looked from Sophia to Blake to Maya. This is wrong, he said, but there was no heat in it anymore. Objection noted. Maya turned to Blake. Here's what we're going to do. The diversion was simple in concept, brutal in execution. Blake created noise 200 meters east of the aggressor patrol branches, breaking a voice calling out the sounds of someone stumbling through underbrush. It was enough to draw 2 of the 4 aggressors away to investigate. While they were gone, Maya approached the remaining 2 from behind. Don't move. The aggressors spun around, but Maya was already inside their guard. She didn't strike them. That would escalate beyond the exercise parameters, but she positioned herself so that any movement toward their weapons would result in immediate physical contact. Release the prisoners, she said calmly. This isn't how the exercise works. Release them, or I demonstrate exactly how quickly I can incapacitate both of you before your backup returns. The senior aggressor, a lieutenant from the Ranger Battalion, studied her face. You're Sterling, the one who dropped Vance. That's me. We were told to watch for you. He almost smiled. We were told you'd probably try something stupid. Is it working? The lieutenant glanced at his partner, then at the 3 prisoners, then at the tree line where Blake's distraction was fading. 20 seconds, he said. Then we call it in. and you lose everything. 20 seconds is enough." The aggressors stepped back. The 3 Team 2 members stared at Maya in confusion. "Run," she told them. "Northeast 2 miles. There's a concealed position in a rock formation. Hide there until the patrols pass, then continue to extraction. Who are you? Someone who doesn't leave people behind. Move." They moved. Maya vanished into the forest just as the 2 aggressors who had investigated Blake's diversion came running back. "What happened? Where are the prisoners?" The lieutenant shrugged. "They escaped. Must have found a weak point in our security. We need to call it in. We will, in about 15 minutes." Maya reached her team's rally point 60 seconds later. Blake was already there, breathing hard. Did it work? It worked. Webb was sitting against a tree, his expression unreadable. When Maya approached, he stood up slowly. "That was the dumbest thing I've ever seen anyone do," he said. "Probably. We could have lost everything. 7 miles from extraction, and you risked it all for strangers." "They're not strangers. They're operators who volunteered for the same exercise we did." Webb stared at her for a long moment. Something was shifting behind his eyes, the contempt giving way to something else, something that looked almost like respect. "Vance was wrong about you," he said quietly. Maya didn't respond. She didn't need validation from Webb. She didn't need validation from anyone. But it felt good to hear anyway. 6 miles, she said. "Let's finish this." They reached the extraction point at 15:47 hours on day 3 third place for arrival time, but with every team member intact. Captain Rutherford was waiting with a cadre of evaluators. When Maya's team emerged from the tree line, he checked his clipboard and nodded slowly. "Team 3, all 4 members accounted for." He looked at Sophia's splinted knee, at the exhaustion on everyone's faces. "You had an injury?" "Yes, sir. Lance Corporal Reyes sustained a knee injury on day 2. "And you continued with 4 members despite the injury?" "Yes, sir. We redistributed her equipment and adjusted our pace." Rutherford made a note on his clipboard. "I also received reports of a prisoner escape approximately 4 hours ago. 3 members of Team 2 were being transported to detention when they somehow got away." He looked at Maya with an expression that was carefully neutral. "You wouldn't know anything about that, would you, Instructor Sterling?" "Sir, I was focused on reaching our extraction point with my team intact." "Of course you were." Rutherford almost smiled. "Report to the debrief tent at 1800. I want a full account of your decisions during the exercise." "Yes, sir." Maya turned to her team. Blake was grinning. Sophia was crying relief, exhaustion, pride, all mixed together. Even Webb looked different, the hostile set of his shoulders replaced by something that resembled respect. "We did it," Sophia whispered. "We did it together," Maya said. "Maya, all 4 of us." She'd reached into her pocket and touched the silver dog tag, feeling the coordinates pressed against her palm. "Lucas," she thought. "I hope you're watching." The debrief lasted 3 hours. Captain Rutherford sat across from Maya in a small tent, a digital recorder running on the table between them. He asked her to walk through every decision, every navigation choice, every moment where she had faced a fork in the road and chosen a path. She told him everything: the ridgeline routes that avoided detection, the splint for Sophia's knee, the redistribution of equipment, the negotiation at the checkpoint, the diversion that freed Team 2. When she finished, Rutherford sat in silence for a long moment. "The checkpoint negotiation," he said finally. "That was unauthorized contact with aggressor forces." "Yes, sir?" "You traded intelligence on another team's position for safe passage through their sector." "Yes, sir." "That could be considered a violation of exercise protocols." Maya met his eyes. "Sir, the protocols don't address that specific scenario because no one anticipated it would happen. I made a judgment call that benefited my team without directly harming Team 2. They were already compromised. The aggressors knew their general position. I simply confirmed what they suspected. And the prisoner escape? I created a diversion that drew aggressor attention away from the transport detail. The prisoners escaped on their own initiative. That's a creative interpretation of events. It's an accurate interpretation, sir. Rutherford almost smiled. You know what I think, Instructor Sterling? I think you're exactly the kind of leader the special operations community needs. Someone who thinks creatively under pressure. Someone who prioritizes people over protocols. Someone who refuses to accept that a mission is impossible just because conventional approaches have failed. Maya felt something loosen in her chest, a tension she hadn't realized she was carrying. I also think, Rutherford continued, that Senior Chief Vance is going to be extremely unhappy when he sees the evaluation results. Sir, your team placed third for arrival time, but you received the highest composite scores in every other category. Tactical decision-making, adaptability under changing conditions, leadership under stress, team cohesion. He tapped the folder in front of him. The evaluators were particularly impressed by your decision to continue with an injured team member rather than cash her. They called it exemplary commitment to team integrity. We started as 4. We finished as 4. So you said. Rutherford stood. Results formation is at 1900 hours. I suggest you get cleaned up and get some rest. It's going to be an interesting evening. Maya walked out of the debrief tent into the fading afternoon light. Blake was waiting for her, leaning against a vehicle with his arms crossed. How bad? Not bad. Good, actually. Maya allowed herself a small smile. Highest composite scores in the exercise. Blake's face split into a grin. I knew it. Webb owes me $50. Webb bet against us. Webb bet against you. There's a difference. Blake pushed off the vehicle and fell into step beside her. He's been quiet since we got back. I think you broke something in him during the exercise, something that needed breaking. He followed orders when it mattered. That's all I asked. He did more than follow orders. When Sophia's knee went out, he was the one who suggested the specific branch configuration for the splint, said he'd seen it used in a survival course, and during the prisoner escape diversion, he positioned himself to provide cover if things went wrong. Blake shook his head. I don't think he even realized he was doing it. Muscle memory took over. Maya processed this. Webb had been hostile from the first moment they met, but somewhere in those 72 hours, something had shifted. Not friendship, she didn't expect that, but something closer to professional respect. Where is he now? Medical tent. He twisted his ankle during the final approach, but didn't mention it until after we reached extraction. Blake paused. Sound familiar? Maya thought of Sophia hiding her injury because she couldn't bear to lose her slot in the program. Of herself years ago, pushing through pain because admitting weakness felt like surrender. Yeah, she said quietly. It does. The results formation gathered every participant in the exercise, all 4 teams, all evaluators, all support personnel. Nearly 150 people standing in ranks, as Captain Rutherford took position on a raised platform. Over the past 72 hours, he began, you have been tested in ways that reveal character. Not just physical capability, not just technical skill, but the fundamental qualities that define a leader. He let his gaze sweep across the assembled operators. Some of you exceeded expectations. Some of you fell short. All of you learned something about yourselves. Maya stood with her team near the middle of the formation. Sophia was on crutches now, her knee properly braced by medical personnel. Blake stood at relaxed attention. Webb was slightly apart from the others, his expression unreadable. Team 1, consisting of personnel from SEAL Teams 3 and 7, placed first with an arrival time of 0823 hours. Rutherford nodded to the 4 SEALs at the front of the formation. "Congratulations on your speed and efficiency." Applause rippled through the ranks. Team 4, consisting of Delta selects, placed second with an arrival time of 1134 hours. Strong performance throughout. More applause. Team 3. Rutherford paused, and Maya felt every eye in the formation turn toward her. Led by Instructor Sterling with Petty Officer Blake Corporal Webb and Lance Corporal Reyes. Third place for arrival time at 1547 hours. Someone in the back muttered something that sounded like expected. However, Rutherford continued, his voice sharpening. Team 3 received the highest composite evaluation scores of any team in the exercise. Highest marks in tactical decision-making. Highest marks in adaptability. Highest marks in team cohesion under adversity. And the only team in the exercise to complete with all 4 original members, despite a significant injury. The muttering stopped. Furthermore, Team 3's leadership decisions during the exercise demonstrated exceptional judgment under pressure. Instructor Sterling's navigation choices reduced exposure to aggressor detection while maintaining timeline viability. Her decision to redistribute equipment rather than cache an injured teammate showed commitment to unit integrity that reflects the highest values of special operations. Rutherford looked directly at Maya. The evaluator's unanimous assessment is that Instructor Sterling demonstrated leadership capability that would be an asset to any unit in this community. Silence hung over the formation. Then, from somewhere in the middle ranks, someone started clapping. It was Tyler Ross. Maya could see his face. Others joined him. Within seconds, the entire formation was applauding. Maya stood at attention, her face carefully neutral, but something was cracking open inside her. Not pride exactly, something deeper. Recognition, acceptance, the feeling of belonging somewhere she had fought so hard to reach. "One additional announcement," Rutherford said, and the applause faded. "I have received and reviewed a formal complaint filed by Senior Chief Derek Vance regarding Instructor Sterling's conduct during the joint training rotation." Maya's stomach tightened. "After thorough investigation, including review of the field exercise results and interviews with multiple personnel, I have determined that the complaint lacks merit. It will be dismissed without further action." Rutherford paused. Additionally, Senior Chief Vance has submitted a request for transfer to a non-training command. That request has been approved. He will depart for Naval Station Norfolk by the end of the week. Someone in the back whispered, "Holy hell." Senior Chief Vance has also submitted a written apology for his conduct during the initial combatives demonstration. That apology has been accepted and will be placed in his service record along with a non-punitive letter of caution documenting the incident. Rutherford's expression hardened. "Let me be clear. This community has no place for prejudice based on gender size or any other factor unrelated to capability. We judge our personnel by their performance, their character, and their commitment to the mission. Nothing else." He stepped back from the platform. Formation dismissed. The ranks broke apart into clusters of conversation. Maya stood rooted in place, processing what had just happened. Vance was gone. His complaint dismissed. His transfer approved. Everything he had tried to do to destroy her career had failed. Blake appeared at her shoulder. "You okay?" "I don't know." Maya shook her head slowly. "I expected to fight this for months. I expected bureaucratic battles and formal hearings and endless documentation. I didn't expect it to just end." "It didn't end. You ended it." Blake grinned. 72 hours in the field and you proved everything that needed proving. Vance couldn't argue with the results. Sophia hobbled over on her crutches. Her face was streaked with tears she wasn't bothering to hide. "Thank you," she said. I don't know what to say. You could have left me. You should have left me, but you didn't." "I told you. We started as 4. We finished as 4. I know." Sophia laughed through her tears. "I'm going to remember that for the rest of my career. Every time I face something that seems impossible, I'm going to remember that you refuse to leave me behind." Webb approached slowly, his ankle wrapped in compression bandages. He stopped a few feet away, looking uncertain for the first time since Maya had met him. "Instructor Sterling." "Corporal, I was wrong about you." The words came out stiff, like he was forcing them through a throat that didn't want to cooperate. "What I said before the exercise, what I believed about women in combat roles, it was wrong." "What changed your mind?" Webb was quiet for a moment. "When Sophia's knee went out, I was ready to leave her. Standard doctrine, mission priority, all the things Vance taught me." He shook his head. "But you refused. And I watched you for the next 30 hours making decisions that should have gotten us all captured, and every single one of them worked. The checkpoint negotiation, the prisoner diversion, the route choices that avoided every patrol." He met her eyes directly. "I've served with a lot of operators. Some of them were good. Some of them were exceptional. You're in the second category." He extended his hand. "I'm sorry for how I treated you. I was an ass." Maya looked at his hand. This was the man who had called her a political appointment, who had promised to undermine her leadership, who had questioned every decision she made. She shook his hand. "Apology accepted. Now get your ankle looked at properly before you make it worse." Webb almost smiled. "Yes, ma'am." He walked away limping slightly, and Maya watched him go, with something approaching wonder. People could change. Even people who seemed locked into their prejudices could see past them when reality proved them wrong. Maybe there was hope for the world after all. 3 days later, Maya was called to Captain Rutherford's office. When she entered, she stopped dead in the doorway. Her father was sitting in the chair across from Rutherford's desk. Vice Admiral Thomas Sterling looked older than she remembered. His hair had gone fully gray since Ethan's funeral. His face carried lines that hadn't been there before. He wore civilian clothes, a button-down shirt, and khakis, and the absence of his uniform made him seem smaller, somehow more human. He stood when she entered. "Maya." She couldn't speak. 2 years of silence, 2 years of blocked phone calls and unanswered letters, and here he was sitting in an office at Naval Special Warfare Training Center like it was the most natural thing in the world. "I called him," Rutherford said from behind his desk. "After I reviewed your exercise results, I thought you two needed to have a conversation." "With respect, sir," Maya managed, "that wasn't your decision to make." "No, it wasn't. But I made it anyway. Call it an old man's prerogative." Rutherford stood and walked toward the door. "I'll give you some privacy. Take as long as you need." He closed the door behind him, leaving Maya alone with her father. Neither of them spoke for a long moment. "You look good," her father said finally. "Strong, healthy." "I've been training. I know. James told me about the field exercise, the navigation decisions, the leadership under pressure, the refusal to leave an injured teammate behind." He paused. "He said you reminded him of the best officers he served with, including me." Maya didn't know what to do with that. Praise from her father felt foreign, like hearing a language she had forgotten. "Why are you here?" "Because I was wrong." The words came out flat, matter-of-fact. "What I said to you at Lucas's funeral, what I believed about your capabilities, your place in this world. I was wrong about all of it. And it took a phone call from a captain to make you realize that, no, It took 2 years of silence and a phone call from a captain. Her father's voice cracked slightly. Maya, I've thought about that conversation every day since it happened. Every single day. I've replayed it in my head, wished I could take it back, tried to understand why I said those things to you when you were grieving your brother. Why did you... He sat down heavily, suddenly looking every one of his 63 years. Because I was terrified. Because I had just buried my son, my golden child, my perfect warrior, the one I trained from birth to carry on everything I built, and the idea of losing you too was more than I could bear. He looked up at her with eyes that were red-rimmed wet. I convinced myself that if I could push you out of this life, push you towards something safer, I wouldn't have to stand at another grave at Arlington. So you told me I didn't belong, that I was wasting my time, that Lucas was built for this, and I wasn't. Yes, and it was the cruelest thing I've ever said to anyone. Her father's voice broke completely. You were grieving, Maya. You had just lost your twin brother, and instead of holding you, instead of sharing that grief with you, I attacked you. I made you feel small and worthless and unwanted. Maya felt the walls she had built over 2 years begin to tremble. You did. I know. And I understand if you never forgive me for it. But I need you to know that I was wrong. Not just about what I said, but about what I believed. He leaned forward. I made calls after James contacted me. I talked to people you served with in Eastern Europe. I talked to your instructors at Quantico. I talked to officers in NCIS who worked with you on operations I never even knew about. And what did they tell you? They told me you're one of the most capable, tactically sound, and reliable operators they've ever worked with. They told me your skills have nothing to do with who your father is. They told me you've built something entirely your own, something Lucas would have been proud of. His voice dropped. Something I should be proud of. Maya felt tears threatening. She fought them back. I didn't do any of this for you. I know. I didn't do it for Lucas either. I know that too. You did it for yourself, because you knew who you were and what you were capable of even when everyone else doubted you. Her father stood and walked toward her slowly. That's what I missed, Maya. That's what I couldn't see. You weren't chasing Lucas's legacy or trying to compete with his memory. You were building your own path, and I was too blind and too scared to recognize it. And he stopped a few feet away from her. I'm proud of you. Not because you're my daughter, not because you proved me wrong. I'm proud of you because you became someone Lucas would have been honored to serve alongside. Someone I would have been honored to serve alongside. The tears broke through. Maya felt them streaming down her face and didn't bother to hide them. Why didn't you ever see me all those years growing up? Why was it always about Lucas? Why was I invisible? You weren't invisible. I was just too focused on what I expected to see instead of what was actually there. Her father reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away. When she didn't, he touched her shoulder. Lucas was easy. He fit every template I had. But you were always your own person. You didn't follow the paths I laid out. You carved your own, and I was too rigid to appreciate that. Maya reached into her pocket and pulled out the silver dog tag. She had carried it every day since Lucas's funeral, through operations in Eastern Europe, through training rotations, through the field exercise that had just changed everything. Lucas gave me this the night before his last mission. Her father looked at the tag at the coordinates engraved on its surface. His face went pale. Kabul, he whispered. The rooftop where the helicopter went down. The place where he... Maya's voice caught. I was on the phone with him when it happened. I heard the explosion. I heard him say my name. Her father closed his eyes. His whole body seemed to shudder. I didn't know. No one knows. I never told anyone. Maya pressed the dog tag into his palm. He told me to remember what mattered. I thought it meant proving I didn't need anyone's help or approval, proving I could succeed alone. What does it mean now? It means knowing when to stand alone and when to accept support. Both are necessary. Both take strength. She stepped back. She stepped. You can keep that. As a reminder that Lucas believed in me even when you didn't. And as a reminder that I'm willing to try again if you are. Her father stared at the dog tag in his hand. When he looked up, tears were streaming down his face. I'll try, he said. I'll try. They stood there for a long moment. Father and daughter, 2 years of pain and silence, hanging between them. Then slowly Maya stepped forward and let him hold her for the first time since she was 14 years old. It wasn't forgiveness. It wasn't reconciliation. It was just a beginning. But beginnings were enough. That night they had dinner together at a small restaurant off base. The conversation was awkward, halting, full of silences that stretched too long. But it was honest. Her father told her stories about Lucas she had never heard, moments from his training, things he had said about her. He was proud of you, her father said. Every time I talked to him, he would ask about you first. He said you were the strongest person he knew, even if you didn't realize it. Maya told him about Eastern Europe, about the operations he had never been cleared to know about the skills she had built in places his authority couldn't reach. She told him about the night navigation exercise, about beating Tyler Ross by 47 minutes, about Vance's face when she knocked him flat in front of 200 operators. Her father laughed at that, a real laugh, warm and surprised. I wish I could have seen that. I wish you could have, too. At the end of the evening, he asked, "What happens now?" "I've been offered a permanent position here, Senior CQC Instructor for Special Operations Candidates." "You're accepting?" "I am. This is where I belong. This is where I can make a difference." Her father nodded slowly. "Lucas would have wanted to serve alongside you." "I know." Maya met his eyes. "That's why I'm staying." They parted in the parking lot with a handshake that turned into a brief embrace. Her father promised to call every week. Maya promised to answer. Neither of them knew if they could keep those promises, but they were going to try. Walking back to her quarters, Maya touched her chest where the dog tag had hung for 2 years. It felt strange without it, lighter, emptier, but also somehow freer. She had carried Lucas's memory as a weight. Now she had given part of that weight to someone else. Not to forget Lucas, but to share him. To let her father carry some of the grief and some of the love and some of the responsibility of remembering. It didn't fix everything. 2 years of silence couldn't be erased by one conversation and one dinner. The scars her father had left at the funeral would take years to heal, if they ever healed at all. But it was a start. And starts were all anyone could ask for. 6 months passed like water through open fingers. Maya Sterling stood at the edge of the training platform at Naval Special Warfare Training Center, watching the last rays of California sun paint the sky in shades of fire and gold. In 6 months, she had trained 847 operators. She had taught advanced close-quarters combat to SEALs Force Recon Marines, MARSOC Raiders, and Delta candidates. She had earned a reputation that spread through the special operations community like wildfire. The woman who dropped Senior Chief Vance, the instructor who never left anyone behind, the 20-year-old who had proven that capability had nothing to do with size or gender. "Instructor Sterling." Maya turned. A young petty officer was standing at the edge of the platform, clipboard in hand. "New class is assembled for orientation, ma'am. 24 candidates from 4 units." I'll be there in 5 minutes. The petty officer departed, and Maya allowed herself one more moment of stillness. 6 months ago, she had stood on this same platform and knocked a man twice her size unconscious in front of 200 witnesses. 6 months ago, she had been fighting for the right to exist in a world that didn't want her. Now she owned a piece of that world. Her phone buzzed. A text from her father. "Thinking of you today. Lucas would be proud. I'm proud. Call when you can." She typed back, "Training new class. We'll call tonight." It was the third text this week. Her father called every Sunday without fail, and they talked for anywhere from 20 minutes to 2 hours, depending on what was happening in their lives. The conversations were still sometimes awkward, still sometimes hit painful memories that made both of them go quiet. But they were real, and they were consistent. That was more than Maya had dared to hope for. She walked toward the orientation area, her mind already shifting into instructor mode. The new class was assembled in formation when she arrived. 24 operators stood at attention, their faces showing varying degrees of curiosity, skepticism, and anticipation. Maya had learned to read these expressions over the past 6 months. She knew which ones would be problems, which ones would excel, which ones would surprise her. She stepped onto the platform and faced them. "My name is Instructor Sterling. Over the next 12 weeks, I'm going to teach you how to survive when your weapons fail, when your team is compromised, when the only thing standing between you and death is what you can do with your hands." She let her gaze move across each face. Some of you are wondering why a woman who weighs 130 pounds is standing on this platform. Some of you are wondering if I can actually teach you anything. She paused. Some of you have already decided I can't. A few operators shifted uncomfortably. Maya caught the sideways glances, the barely suppressed smirks. Good. Let them underestimate her. It made the lesson more memorable. "Petty Officer Kane." A young SEAL in the front row stiffened. "Ma'am, step onto the platform." Kane climbed up with the confident swagger of someone who had never been humbled in his life. He was maybe 23, heavily muscled, with the eager energy of a dog straining at its leash. "You look skeptical, Petty Officer. That's fine. Skepticism can be healthy." Maya positioned herself 3 feet in front of him. "I'm going to give you one free shot. Full contact. Anywhere you want." Kane's eyes widened. "Ma'am, you heard me? Hit me." The formation went silent. Kane looked around, uncertain, then back at Maya. "Ma'am, I don't think—" "That's your problem, Petty Officer. You're thinking instead of acting. In close quarters combat, hesitation gets you killed." Maya set her stance. "Hit me. Now." Kane's jaw tightened. He was being challenged in front of his peers, and his pride wouldn't let him back down. He threw the fastest right cross he could manage. Maya wasn't there when it arrived. She had read his weight shift, his shoulder drop, the tension in his forearm. She slipped beneath his arm, trapped his wrist, applied pressure to his elbow, and brought him to his knees in a joint lock so clean that several operators in the formation actually gasped. She held him there for exactly 3 seconds, long enough for the lesson to sink in, then released him. Kane climbed to his feet, rubbing his elbow. His face was flushed with embarrassment, but his eyes had changed. The arrogance was gone, replaced by something that looked like respect. "Size doesn't determine capability," Maya told the formation. "Training does. Discipline does. The willingness to learn when you think you already know everything that determines whether you walk out of a fight or get carried out." She stepped back. "Now, let's begin." 3 weeks into the training cycle, Sophia Reyes came to visit. Maya was reviewing after-action reports in her office when there was a knock on the door. She looked up, and found Sophia standing in the doorway, no longer on crutches, wearing the uniform of a newly promoted sergeant. "Permission to enter, ma'am." "Sophia." Maya stood genuinely surprised. "I didn't know you were on base." "Just passing through. I'm on my way to a new assignment." Sophia stepped inside and closed the door. "I wanted to thank you in person before I left." "You already thanked me, multiple times." "Not properly." Sophia took a breath. "I got selected for an advanced reconnaissance course. The selection board cited my performance during the CRA exercise as a primary factor. Specifically, they mentioned demonstrated resilience under adversity and commitment to team integrity despite significant physical limitation." Maya felt warmth spread through her chest. "That's wonderful. You earned it." "I earned it because you refused to leave me behind," Sophia's voice caught. "Maya, I've thought about that moment every day for 6 months. When my knee gave out and Webb said we should cash me and you said no, just no, like it wasn't even a question." "It wasn't a question. We started as 4, we finished as 4, I know." Sophia laughed, wiping her eyes. "That's going to follow me for the rest of my career. Every time I face something impossible, I hear your voice saying those words." She reached into her pocket and pulled out something small and metallic. "I want you to have this." It was a challenge coin custom-made with the CRE exercise date on one side and 4 interlocking figures on the other, stylized representations of their team. "I had them made for all of us. Blake Webb, you and me. So we never forget what we accomplished together." Maya took the coin, feeling its weight in her palm. Challenge coins were a tradition in the military community, tokens of shared experience, symbols of bonds forged under pressure. "Thank you," she said quietly. "This means more than you know." Sophia smiled. "I have to get going. My flight leaves in 3 hours." She hesitated at the door. "Maya, whatever you do next, wherever this career takes you, don't ever let anyone make you feel small. You're the biggest person I've ever met, even if you can't reach the top shelf." Maya laughed, a real laugh, warm and surprised. "Get out of here before I make you do push-ups." Sophia grinned and disappeared. Maya looked at the challenge coin for a long moment, then opened her desk drawer and placed it next to a photograph of Lucas in his DevGru gear. 2 tokens now. 2 reminders of the people she had loved and the people she had led. The collection was growing. A month later, Marcus Webb sent her a letter. It arrived in a plain envelope with no return address, but Maya recognized the handwriting from the exercise documentation. She opened it, expecting. She didn't know what she was expecting. What she got was an apology. "Instructor Sterling," the letter began. "I've been trying to write this for 4 months and I keep throwing it away because the words never come out right. But I'm shipping out next week for a deployment I might not come back from, and I don't want to die without saying what I should have said a long time ago. I was an ass to you. Not just during the exercise, but before it. I believed things about women in combat that I never questioned because Vance told me they were true, and I trusted him more than I trusted my own eyes. I looked at you and saw everything I had been taught to dismiss, and I never gave you a chance to prove me wrong. But you proved me wrong anyway. When Sophia's knee gave out, I was ready to leave her. I told myself it was doctrine. It was mission priority. It was the smart, tactical decision. But the truth is, I was scared. Scared that if we slowed down, we'd get caught. Scared that your leadership would fail and I'd be blamed for following a woman's orders. You weren't scared. You redistributed her load, adjusted the pace, and got us all to extraction without leaving anyone behind. You made decisions that I thought were crazy. The checkpoint negotiation, the prisoner diversion, and every single one of them worked. I've served with a lot of operators. Some of them were good leaders. Some of them were just loud. You're different. You lead by example, not by intimidation. You make people want to follow you, not because you threaten them, but because you show them what's possible. I was wrong about women in combat. I was wrong about you, and I'm sorry it took me so long to admit it. If I don't make it back from this deployment, I want you to know that serving on your team changed how I think about leadership, about capability, about what really matters when everything goes to hell. You're the real thing, Instructor Sterling. Don't let anyone tell you different. Respectfully, Marcus Webb, Corporal, USMC. Maya read the letter 3 times. Then she folded it carefully and placed it in her desk drawer next to Sophia's challenge coin. Webb had called her the real thing. Webb, who had done everything in his power to undermine her. Webb, who had bet against her and lost. People could change. That was the most hopeful thing Maya had learned in the past 6 months. People who seemed locked in their prejudices could break free when reality showed them a different truth. Maybe there was hope for the world after all. 2 weeks before Christmas, Maya received an unexpected visitor. She was wrapping up an evening training session when a figure appeared at the edge of the platform area. For a moment, Maya didn't recognize him. Civilian clothes, gray hair, a bearing that no longer commanded attention the way it once had. Then she realized it was her father. "Dad," Vice Admiral Thomas Sterling walked toward her, slowly, his hands in his jacket pockets. "I hope I'm not interrupting. I just finished. What are you doing here?" "I came to ask you something." He stopped a few feet away. In person, because it felt too important for a phone call. Maya felt her heart rate increase. Her father had never visited her at work before. Whatever this was, it was significant. "What is it? I want you to come home for Christmas. Not just for dinner. I want you to stay for the whole week." He paused. "Your mother's grave is in Arlington. Lucas's grave is there too. I haven't visited either of them since the funeral. I think it's time I did, and I'd like you to be there with me." Maya felt something shift in her chest. Her mother had died when Maya was 14. Ovarian cancer diagnosed too late, gone within 8 months. Maya had been devastated, but her father had barely seemed to notice he was deployed for most of the illness and arrived home 3 days before the end. She had never forgiven him for that. Not completely. Not until this moment when he stood in front of her asking to visit a grave he had avoided for 6 years. Why now? Because I've spent 6 years running from grief instead of facing it. Because I lost your mother, and then I lost Lucas, and I was so afraid of losing you that I pushed you away instead of holding on. His voice cracked. Because I'm 63 years old, and I don't know how much time I have left, and I don't want to waste any more of it pretending I'm too strong to hurt. Maya stared at him. This was not the man she had grown up with. This was not the admiral who had commanded DevGru, who had sent thousands of men into combat without flinching, who had told her at her brother's funeral that she didn't belong in his world. This was someone new. Someone broken open by loss, and slowly, painfully putting himself back together. "Okay," she said quietly. "I'll come home for Christmas." Her father's eyes filled with tears. He reached out and pulled her into an embrace, holding her the way he should have held her when her mother died, the way he should have held her when Lucas died, the way she had needed him to hold her for so many years. "Thank you," he whispered. "Thank you." They stood there for a long time, father and daughter, letting the silence say what words couldn't. Christmas week was harder than Maya expected. She flew into Virginia on December 22nd. Her father picked her up at the airport, and they drove to his house in silence that was comfortable rather than awkward. The house was the same one she had grown up in, colonial style. White columns, American flag on the porch, but it felt different somehow. Smaller, quieter, emptier. On Christmas Eve, they went to Arlington. They visited her mother's grave first. Elizabeth Marie Sterling, 1965 to 2011. Beloved wife and mother. Maya had brought flowers, white roses, her mother's favorite, and she placed them at the base of the headstone while her father stood with his head bowed. "I should have been here," he said quietly. "When she was sick, when she was dying. I should have been here instead of chasing missions on the other side of the world. You were doing your job. I was hiding." He shook his head. "I told myself the Navy needed me, the mission was critical, I couldn't abandon my post. But the truth is, I couldn't face watching her die. I couldn't face being helpless while the woman I loved slipped away." He looked at Maya. "So I ran. And I left you and Lucas to handle it alone." Maya didn't know what to say. She had been 14 when her mother died, old enough to understand what was happening but too young to process it properly. Lucas had stepped up, becoming the parent their father refused to be. He had held her when she cried, taken her to her mother's appointments, sat with her during the final days. Lucas had always been there. Until suddenly, he wasn't. "Let's go see him," Maya said. Lucas's grave was in Section 60, where the recent war dead were buried. The headstone was simple white marble, identical to the thousands of others surrounding it. Lucas James Sterling, Chief Petty Officer, U.S. Navy SEAL Team 6, 1997 to 2023. Greater love hath no man than this. Maya knelt in front of the grave and pressed her palm against the cold stone. "Hey, Luke," she whispered. "It's been a while." Her father stood behind her, his shoulders shaking with silent sobs. "I did it," Maya continued. "Everything you said I would do. I became an instructor. I trained operators. I proved that I belonged." She felt tears streaming down her face. "I wish you could see it. I wish you could have been there when I knocked Vance flat on his ass. You would have laughed so hard." She pulled her hand back and stood. "I carried your dog tag for 2 years, the one with the Kabul coordinates. I gave it to Dad a few months ago." She glanced at her father. "He needed it more than I did. He needed something to remind him that you believed in both of us, even when he didn't believe in himself." Her father stepped forward and placed his hand on the headstone. "I'm sorry," he said, his voice breaking. "I'm sorry I wasn't the father you deserved. I'm sorry I pushed Maya away when I should have held her close. I'm sorry I made this family about duty and service instead of love." He pressed his forehead against the cold marble. "You were the best of us, Lucas. But Maya is carrying on everything you started. She's building something you would have been proud of. And I'm finally learning to see her the way you always did." They stayed at the grave until the sun began to set, two people learning to share grief they had carried alone for too long. That night they had dinner together in the house where Maya and Lucas had grown up. Her father cooked badly, but with effort, and they ate overcooked chicken and undercooked vegetables, while laughing at how terrible it all was. "Your mother was the cook," her father admitted. "I never learned because I was never home long enough for it to matter." "Lucas tried to teach me," Maya said. "I was hopeless. He used to joke that I could field strip a rifle blindfolded but couldn't boil water without burning it." "That sounds like Lucas." They talked late into the night, sharing memories they had kept locked away. Her father told her about meeting her mother at a Navy ball in 1989, about the way she had challenged him to be better than he was. Maya told him about the operations in Eastern Europe that weren't in any official record about the skills she had built in places his authority couldn't reach. At midnight, her father gave her a gift. It was a small box wrapped in plain paper. Inside was a brass compass antique with coordinates engraved on the case. "Norfolk," Maya said, recognizing the numbers. "The naval station where I was born. Where our family started." Her father's voice was thick with emotion. Lucas gave you Kabul, the place where everything ended. I'm giving you Norfolk, the place where everything began. Maya opened the compass case. Inside was a handwritten note in her father's careful script. For finding your way home. Whenever you're ready. She looked up at her father, tears blurring her vision. I thought I had to choose between my career and my family, between proving myself and belonging somewhere. You don't have to choose. Her father took her hands. You can have both. You can be the warrior Lucas believed you were, and the daughter I should have seen all along. They're not mutually exclusive. They never were. Maya closed her hand around the compass and felt something inside her finally settle into place. She had spent so long fighting to prove she belonged. Fighting against prejudice, against doubt, against the voices that told her she was too small, too young, too female to matter. But belonging wasn't something you proved. It was something you accepted. And tonight, in this house, full of memories and grief and hard-won forgiveness, she finally accepted it. 6 months after Christmas, Maya received orders for a new assignment. She was being transferred to a joint special operations training command tasked with developing a new curriculum for close-quarters combat instruction. It was a promotion, a recognition of everything she had accomplished, a chance to shape how the next generation of operators would be trained. She accepted without hesitation. On her last day at Coronado, she walked through the training facility one final time. The platforms where she had taught. The areas where she had demonstrated techniques that saved lives. The spaces that had become home over the past year. Jordan Blake found her standing near the main platform. I heard you're leaving. New assignment. Joint Training Command. Blake nodded slowly. You're going to do great things there, just like you did here. Thank you for everything, Jordan. For believing in me when you had no reason to. For being a witness when I needed one. You didn't need witnesses. You needed people to get out of your way so you could do what you were always going to do. He extended his hand. It's been an honor serving with you, Instructor Sterling. Maya shook his hand. The honor was mine. She walked out of the facility and into the California sunshine. Her car was packed. Her new orders were in her pocket. Her father's compass was around her neck, hanging next to a new dog tag she had commissioned, one with different coordinates. Not Kabul, not Norfolk, Coronado, the place where she had proven herself, the place where she had become who she was meant to be. She climbed into her car and sat for a moment looking at the training center in her rearview mirror. A year ago, she had arrived here with nothing but her skills and her determination and a dog tag full of grief. She had faced a man who wanted to destroy her and knocked him flat. She had led a team through impossible conditions and brought everyone home. She had reconciled with a father who had spent years failing to see her. And now she was leaving to do it all over again somewhere new, with new challenges and new opportunities to prove that capability had nothing to do with size or gender or anyone else's expectations. Maya started the engine and pulled out of the parking lot. The road ahead was long. The work would be hard. The respect would be earned one day at a time. And she wouldn't have it any other way.